You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, along with my co-hosts, Mr. Kyle Dvorchak, Mr. Bob Harris. Gentlemen, the draft is upon us. Things are crazy in the world. We're healthy. That's good. We hope everybody else is healthy. Mr. Harris, what's going on in Albuquerque, New Mexico tonight?
Well, I know you and I just poured out virgin quarantinis for ourselves to get this going. Kyle is having a Boilermaker, I believe. So, everything's good. We're again mindful of the problems existing in the world, and we're dealing with them the way you're dealing with them as best we can. And one of the ways we do is to provide a little diversion, a little distraction, a little entertainment, and that's what we'll do. And we'll focus mostly on that. There are some COVID-19 related, stories with everything. I mean, it's affecting every aspect of everybody's life, and we'll touch on some of those things here in a moment. But we'll jump into the news first. We'll just, Christian McCaffrey. We heard about a week ago, just a little tidbit from Marty Hurdy saying, we're starting to have the talks about this. And boom, apparently we know what they're doing to kill time during the quarantine in Carolina. They're talking contract. McCaffrey gets a 4-year extension, $64 million, $16 million a year. He is now the highest paid running back in the NFL. The trend has been not to pay running backs, Zeke, notwithstanding, he's now making more than Zeke. But I thought it was interesting, guys, that, basically Matt Rule came out today and said we view him as more than a running back. We see him as a weapon. He can be a wide out running back returner, and the numbers bear him out. Justin, are you okay with this vast expenditure?
Ordinarily, I wouldn't be, but I think that Christian McCaffrey sets the bar high, and you're absolutely right. This is a guy that can do it all, right? I mean, so you've locked him up for 4 years. He's turning 24 in June. You're going to have him for his entire prime. You're going to get every drop out of him. The usage is there, and this is a guy that can run inside. He can bounce outside. He's a fantastic wide receiver out of the backfield. So what do you do with him? So the Carolina Panthers are getting bang for their buck. If anybody deserved that kind of money, I think it's a player or running back like Christian McCaffrey. He's RB1 in fantasy circles. He is the first overall pick because the usage is going to be there. They've been talking about, using corners against him when he lines up. I mean, it's just, and now you have Teddy at the helm who's going to check down a ton. Christian McCaffrey, to me, is your modern day Marshall Faulk. He's LaDainian Tomlinson. He's a problem. He's that special. The only concern, when you get, I'm a guy that would be opposed to paying a player, say, like Derrick Henry. You know what Derrick Henry is? He's special. He's big. No involvement in the passing game. So you kind of go, you know what you're getting there. With Christian McCaffrey, you don't know what's to come. He can do it all, and he's that special of a talent. My only thing would be, are we going to see wear and tear on his tires? Because we've seen it with everybody over the course of time nearly. So do they give him 350 touches? Can he sustain that type of volume? Teddy Bridgewater's capabilities are limited. And I think, look, Christian McCaffrey is a centerpiece of this offense. There's no question about it. But you do have him for 4 years up until he's 28 years old. Does it behoove you to give him the football 350 times each season? He's a human being. They do have some weapons on the Panthers team now. We're seeing them. Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore is coming into play. So that it's not just McCaffrey, but I would be concerned with the usage because, again, he's a human. And a couple years ago, we were talking about Todd Gurley. We knew he had knee problems. Maybe he can reinvent himself in Atlanta, but I think volume took its toll on Todd Gurley. And just like that, he's in fantasy circles. I know we can get him. He's like RB20 something tonight. So things can change quick, especially at running back. But I think if anybody deserves $64 million, it's Christian McCaffrey.
He did lead all the NFL players last year with 403 touches. Only Elliott has more the last two seasons, 736 to 729. Kyle, I think we just got evidence that Justin is home too much watching TV, the Progressive Motar commercial. I will suggest Christian McCaffrey has no tires or tread on them. But I digress. You did mention Marshall Faulk, and so McCaffrey joined Roger, Craig, and Falk as the only players to top 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000 yards receiving this season. The fantasy points have been amazing. He's coming up back-to-back 100-catch seasons. There's 303 receptions in 3 seasons. So, Kyle, are we concerned about the change in coaching staff? I'm guessing not, but dig into it a little bit.
No, because, I guess there's a few things. I think even if the coaching staff was worse, which seems rather unlikely, the switch away from Kyle Allen and Will Grier to Teddy Bridgewater would, even if the coaching, the play calling is less optimal, that switch alone would mitigate any risk, I feel, because of how awful Kyle Allen and I guess 2 games, I believe, of Will Grier were. So even if the coaching switch were to be lesser, the players on the field are what matter most to me in terms of predicting these things. And Teddy Bridgewater will buoy the whole offense to some extent. And no, the coaching upgrade, should, even if they do decide, which I think there was a news bite today that came out that they said they don't want him to play every single snap, which he nearly did this season. We saw that going into last year.
Yeah.
We saw we saw that they wanted to spell him, and he was playing, like you said, he led the league in touches. He's Christian McCaffrey. What more can we say? That was, I don't want to call it a lie, but just very obviously not true from the first game that he was going to play nearly every single snap. I think that's likely what happens again. And more importantly, even if they did take some modicum of touches away from him, I believe that the Joe Brady-led offense will be more efficient because I believe he is a talented play caller. And I believe the staff they had previously was not very good at their jobs. I mean, clearly, it didn't help that they had Kyle Allen, but they kind of squandered away a lot of what Cam Newton could do. They weren't very good at their, the offense wasn't very good. Very clearly, the offense wasn't very good. They underachieved the talent they had. So I believe that even if McCaffrey's touches are slightly scaled back, the efficiency of the offense will more than make up for that. So no, I don't think it concerns me much at all. And I think it's even, if you can somehow find a way to boost McCaffrey, it should be a little bit.
Justin, yes or no? Is he your number 1 overall pick?
He has to be. Yeah, he has to.
Kyle, yes or no?
100%. Yep.
All right, so we're all in. I totally concur.
This is the least contentious it's been in years, in my opinion.
Right. And, I thought Barkley was pretty much an easy lock last year, but I got to say, I had multiple overall number 1s, and there came a point where I got uncomfortable with all the shares, and I don't know that I would with McCaffrey. I might just keep driving that bus right into the ditch if I have to. So
I would say that they're equally talented. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it's the usage that you that I wonder, and we clearly have a pretty good indication. Although the coaching staff change maybe is a concern, maybe really not, because I agree with everything Kyle said. All right, in other news, Bill O'Brien not great at the general managing. Fortunately, he's an amazing coach. Oh, wait. No, the much maligned Bill O'Brien continued to make moves. Acquired David Johnson for DeAndre Hopkins. By the way, Hopkins reportedly has passed his physical with the Cardinals. David Johnson has to. All the moves we've talked about last week, and if you didn't listen last week or the last pod, go back and listen to it. A lot of good information there. But all the moves that have been made are all, pending physicals. We've heard Todd Gurley is confident he'll pass his in Atlanta. We now hear DeAndre Hopkins has passed his, and David Johnson likely will pass his. But none of the deals we've talked about are done until the physicals are done. So keep that in mind in the backs of your minds. Brandon Cooks traded for the fourth team in his career, third trade, fourth team in his career. Someone hit me up on Twitter when I first threw this out there. And basically said every team loves Brandon Cooks except the team that has him. And I think that's a pretty apt, it turns out. So drafted in the first round by the Saints, 2014, traded for a first round pick to the Patriots in 2017, traded to the Rams for a first round pick in 2018. The price is a little bit cheaper now. We understand why. Coming off a pretty bad season, but he'd been really productive the previous 5 years. I mean, regardless of team, he goes into an offense with that much maligned Bill O'Brien, but it's a Patriots-like offense and something that he's familiar with. Justin, your assessment of the impact on the Texans side of this deal.
So there's a void to fill with DeAndre Hopkins out right. And I think it's tough to rely on Will Fuller. We love him when he's healthy. He's never healthy. He's in sync with Deshaun Watson, but he's never healthy. The talent's there, just a massive liability. Kyle's boy, Kenny Stills, he's not a wide receiver one. So the numbers to me would suggest that Brandon Cooks, which it is peculiar that I read something that, I'm sure it was Eric Dickerson and Brandon Cooks were traded the most, at this time in their career. Either way, it was some obscure fact, but it is alarming that Brandon Cooks has been, given up on by this will be his fourth team.
Yeah, so three teams have basically punted, and they all paid pretty good prices though, or got pretty good return. The Rams got a little less return, but still, I mean, the Texans, like you said, have the hole. So does Cooks help fill it?
Yeah, I think he does. I think he fits well with Deshaun Watson in terms of hitting home runs. 3 1,000-yard seasons, and look, he's had Tom Brady, he's had Drew Brees, Jared Goff he's a different animal than the two I just mentioned. But we're watching Deshaun Watson come into his own, and I think it's fair for Deshaun Watson to have a talent like Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks has an opportunity to be the man again, kind of reinvent himself in Houston. But when you have to scratch your head when you look at Brandon Cooks' numbers and his age. It's 1,100 yards, 75 receptions, 7-8 touchdowns. I mean, the guy can play and he stays healthy the most of the time. He's like a polished.
He has some concussion issues. He's got a concern for you.
This is true.
Multiple concussions last year. I mean, that's a little bit of a red flag.
I believe it's 5 since entering the league. Is that the right number?
That is the right number.
And they're taking it seriously. I mean, we see it every week. The league is taking it seriously. I mean, you get flicked in the ear or something, I throw that joke around. I mean, you're going to the booth, they're going to look at you because concussions have become a liability for the league. So I think that once you do have that first 1 or 2 concussions, you're more susceptible to get more. I mean, look at the Jordan Reed sad story. Mm-hmm. I mean, this guy, it's very similar. I think Brandon Cooks is young enough to thrive, but it is a bit of a concern because, again, you have a number of concussions, you're more prone to getting them, and maybe teams have looked at that and said, look, this guy's a liability. But his skill set is unquestioned. The quarterback play in Houston is unquestioned, and you're not paying a Brandon Cooks premium at this point in time.
Is he well-rounded enough? I mean, seems like he's kind of a duplicate of Will Fuller, and I guess we could say the same of Kenny Stills. I mean, is anyone there in a position to kind of fill that intermediate void, or one of those guys? I mean, look, maybe they're plenty capable in your estimation.
Kenny Stills never been an 80 reception guy. Will Fuller can't piece 10 games together, right? So we've seen it from Brandon Cooks. We know he's capable of catching 75 balls, 1,100 yards, between 5 to 9 touchdowns. I'm fine with that. In fantasy circles, at the price that we're going to pay for him, you're going to be happy with him being your wide receiver 3 or even 4, the way I pounce on wide receivers because of his price. And if you guarantee me, healthy, quote unquote, Brandon Cooks, which again, we mentioned the concussions, I'm going to be perfectly content with 75 receptions, 1,100 yards and 7-8 touchdowns. And the opportunity is there. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah. I would suggest that much more than Bill O'Brien would be happy with those numbers too. Other side of the ball, Kyle, the Rams. Is it Tyler Higbee season? Is he now wide receiver? Wait, he's a tight end. We got Robert Woods. We got Cooper Kupp. We know what those guys are capable of. Is Josh Reynolds fly up the radar? Are you more sold on Higbee? Maybe as a legit piece based on what we saw late last season. I know Sean McVay was talking up Gerald Everett. Does Darrell Henderson jump into the mix here and catch a bunch of passes? How does it play out, young sir?
Yeah, I swear, did we talk about the same kind of thing with Todd Gurley, that we see that I don't know if they have any alphas at any position, where I don't think any one person is the clear beneficiary, but at this point I do feel increasingly confident in the more ancillary pieces in the Darrell Hendersons, the Tyler Higbees, who at the stretch of last season actually it wasn't an ancillary piece, it was borderline like the primary piece of their offense. So I start to feel more and more confident, but I will say, just because of how much they will run 3 receiver sets, they didn't as much last year, but that also could be much a product of Brandon Cook's injury, that Josh Reynolds just getting to take the field on this offense, which even if like last year wasn't a particularly efficient offense anymore, still like will get to run a lot of plays because their defense isn't as good as it used to be. And they can have, like we saw with their Bucks game, like they can get into these shootouts. They might not be as consistently the best offense in the league, but still getting onto the field for Josh Reynolds, like at a very high rate. He's probably the biggest beneficiary. He's a guy who I'd be willing to take shots on in the later rounds. Outside of that, it does just kind of raise the floor of everybody else in this offense. Reynolds, the clear beneficiary for me, though.
All of that on both sides pending the draft, which we'll be talking about before this show is over. Trust me. The Chargers, they got tight end Hunter Henry to sign his franchise tag. No surprise there. I guess, Kyle, the question for me is, how confident are we that Henry, and let's say all the teams receiving assets, and we could run that all the way through Austin Eckler, how confident are we with Tyrod Taylor at quarterback? Are we as confident as Anthony Lynn seems to be, and Tyrod Taylor seems to be? And how confident will we be if they do draft a rookie early on in this one?
Yeah, for me, I feel confident specifically because how we saw them all perform last year. And Phillip Rivers was like bad. He was legitimately a bad quarterback. The thing is, he just threw it a lot. He was just hucking it around, hucking it deep. So it made it very possible for these players to accomplish the things they did, like Austin Eckler having one of the best receiving seasons as a running back. And like, despite injuries, Hunter Henry having some pretty amazing games, they were able to accomplish all those things, not because Phillip Rivers was good anymore, but because he threw it a lot. And although it's almost impossible to believe that they will run as many plays or throw it as often this season, because I think the style of Tyrod Taylor's play is he's a running quarterback. He's gonna help burn clock and run these slow drives. Quarterback running is generally an efficient way to run the football, so they might still be able to sustain drives, but it will be a slower style of play with less pass attempts, simply for the fact that those pass attempts get eaten up when he breaks the pocket and runs instead of passing. But I do think he will be a more efficient passer, because Phillip Rivers wasn't very good last year. He seemed on the tail end of his career, and Tyrod Taylor for streaks was efficient, albeit conservative. So for me, for the players like a Mike Williams, I'm not so sure I feel great about that. Like, Phillip Rivers was not great, but he was still aggressive, and that's what you wanted for Mike Williams, piling up those air yards. I don't feel great about him, but for the shorter A-dot type of guys, your Keenan Allens, your Austin Eckler's, I feel pretty good about those guys going forward still. The rookie quarterback would actually concern me, because one, the quarterbacks who generally don't go very high in the draft, like top 1, 2, 3, don't have an awesome hit rate, and then having to switch, assuming this quarterback would get on the field in his first season, having to switch quarterbacks in the middle or any point of your season while they weren't really getting many first team reps, they weren't practicing with the starters, that would concern me more. So I'd actually be interested in this offense if they manage to come out of the draft without a first round quarterback, although that does seem a bit unlikely despite everything Anthony Lynn is saying.
Justin Lonero, reveal to me your top 5 tight ends as it stands right now. Go.
It is Travis Kelce, George Kittle. And then after that, I struggle a little bit. I think you have to put Mark Andrews in the 3 hole. I am inclined to put Zach Ertz at tight end 4, but we saw Dallas Goedert finish at tight end 10 last year. They were using 2 tight end sets in Philly. So a little skeptical there, but Zach Ertz is a big part of what Carson Wentz does. So I think you have to put Ertz in the top 5. And then for 5, I'm going to use Darren Waller there because of the lack of weaponry right now with the Raiders. I think he is that de facto wide receiver 1. So it's Waller, and I'll throw you one more, and that's going to be Evan Ingram. I would like to see Evan Ingram play 16 games with Daniel Jones in New York. I think that he has that type of upside. We just haven't seen it on a consistent basis. So I'm right there. It would be Austin Hooper had he not gone to Cleveland, and David Njoku's there. I haven't given up on him. I think the usage is going to be a little cloudy in Cleveland. You guys know how I felt about Hooper last year. His price is going to be heftier. And I think you can also make an argument for, like you guys were talking about, Hunter Henry. I think he could be that safety blanket for Tyrod Taylor or a rookie quarterback early. And like Tyrod Taylor used Charles Clay in the Buffalo days and checking down as that proverbial safety valve.
2 points. You're selling yourself short. You said you struggle with the tight ends. You struggle in general. And also, Also, I think you just listed 10 tight ends in your top 5, which is usually my thing. That's quit stealing. Stay in your lane. My lane is 10 guys and 5.
Most of them are mediocre, so.
It's true. All right, so let's move on. We've spent a lot of time on those 3 stories. We want to get into the draft. I do want to mention a couple other stories the NFL announced. And look, where, circumstances are going to dictate whether there's football or not. What we know is what we've said consistently since this thing began, or since our last pod. The NFL's dead set on having football. I mean, they rolled through free agency like nobody's business. I mean, there are some issues they're dealing with, again, the pending physicals. This week they announced the NFL virtual OTAs. Everyone gets a tablet. Everyone gets a kettlebell. Everyone an Apple Watch, so all these guys are going to be able to check in with the teams. The teams are allowed to send them equipment and training gear and needs up to like $1,500 worth. I suspect some players will be able to spend more. Virtual OTAs begin April 20th. So I'm not especially excited. I'm also not excited that I'm having to write about Dak Prescott not taking part in workouts that aren't actually happening. I think this would be a much bigger story where they actually on the field. Mike McCarthy, I find it hard to believe Dak's not going to study this offense or do his parts. When he's not having birthday parties with maybe 10 people, maybe 30, we don't know. Depends on who you listen to. But anyhow, so look, this is an interesting aspect just for me in terms of it's just another indication the NFL is going to do everything in their power to get ready to play football if they possibly can. And we can, still plenty of time. Things have moved fast in the last month. Life changes quickly. So I know that it looks bleak and everything, but, we're still, 5 months away from football almost, and a lot can happen in that between now and then. And I suspect there's a lot of planning being done, things like that. So I do want to hit on the draft. We're going to talk about the skill position rookies. But I wanted to get your guys' thoughts quickly, Justin, on the NFL Draft, the Quarantine Edition, which will be Roger Goodell in his basement, ESPN and NFL Network all combining the ESPNers from their Connecticut studio where they are considered essential personnel and they can work. The NFL folks working remotely, which we've seen a lot of. I mean, if you've been watching Total Access on NFL Network, I mean, you kind of see in Path to Draft, all their shows, you kind of see how this is going to work. Is this going to be an exciting thing for you? Is it gonna lack something, or do you really not care, Justin? You just want to see who gets a helmet and which helmet it is.
Right. I mean, that push comes to shove. That's what this is all about, even when it's live. I mean, you want to see. I could care less about the Jets fans cheering in the background or the Browns fans dancing around. So it's unique. It's going to feel like kind of like the Jetsons, but it's a serious situation what we're going through right now, and being in quarantine is what we all should be doing. I think, now that I finished watching Netflix, that series is done. There's something else to watch, and that's the NFL Draft. We enjoy it. We love it as fans. I think it's going to draw a lot of eyes, and that's because everybody's home.
Right.
So
it's the only game in town, right? I mean, that's kind of the NFL is, this whole thing, the free agency, the virtual OTAs, the virtual draft. This is like the only game in town. Also, I guess if this is the Jetsons, that makes you Elroy. Kyle, your thoughts on, is this going to be a thing that you're going to, look, we're all going to be watching, right? Are the virtual hugs with Roger Goodell going to be sufficient for you?
Yeah, I'll miss the booing of Roger Goodell.
But you'll boo anyway.
Yeah, I'll just scream. If I'm ever watching TV at home, I'm screaming at the television like they can actually hear me. So no different here. We do have to pray that it's like one of these general managers times out because they can't figure out Zoom. Like that is the old fogies trying to work the internet is, God, can we please get one timeout? Or one team like broadcasting their war room without knowing it, saying who they're going to pick in 3 spots. Like any sort of technical difficulty for comedic effect is going to be a beautiful, but otherwise no difference. I wasn't going to be there. Who cares?
I had a fantastic Zoom call with my parents' foreheads last night. It was amazing.
That's great. That is great. Hey, my home group, my AA home group.
You guys do that on Zoom, right?
The meeting that I got sober. It's called the Sunshine Group. It was a noon meeting, and they're all old timers, people in their 70s and their 80s, and it's the room is full of wisdom. And now where nobody can congregate, you have Zoom. So I jumped on a call Friday, and you're looking at Charlie, 80-year-old Charlie and 80-year-old Jerry, and they're trying to figure this goddamn thing. How does this thing work? Lucy, is this thing on? Hold on, and everybody's trying to like talk, but something, we made it work, and I still got something out of it, but it was interesting watching everybody shuffle around, and they're so accustomed to the physicality.
Gives us all a layer, again, this is going to be one of the things going forward, and we're all going to find a lot of new ways to do a lot of things that we thought we could only do one way in the past, and it's kind of interesting. And so I do want to get into the draft a little bit. Look, I'm of the mind that none of this matters until they get a helmet on them, but we know some of it matters. Like we like the speculation, the intrigue. So we're not going to get so much into who's going where, and we may touch a little bit on that because some seem pretty obvious. But what I did want to look at is the top rookies at each position, and then talk a little bit about the top guys at the skill positions, and then give you guys a chance to talk about some guys that you like outside that big group. So quarterbacks, it's obvious. Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa. I can say it right. Tagovailoa from Alabama, Justin Herbert from Oregon. Now, we're seeing some guys that are kind of pushing up, so, you hear all the buzz, the interviews. Fromm seems to be a guy that's really busting a little bit of a move with the quarterback coaches in the meetings, if you believe the buzz out there. The Georgia quarterback, Jake Fromm. There are other guys, Justin Hurts, Jordan Love. So a lot going on there. So just quickly, Kyle, you're in that area. Any reason to believe that Joe Burrow doesn't end up a Cincinnati Bengal?
Nope. I was trying to find Joe Burrow first overall minus 2,000, minus 3,000, and those all got that implies 80 to 90% odds, and it is so far greater than that. It's very close, in my opinion, to 99+% odds. He goes there, and all those got bet away immediately. So I think it is more so than any other year, a locked in 101, and he deserves it. He was an incredibly he broke. I think there are reasons to caution that he's not the great, he doesn't remind me of the Andrew Luck level of prospect, but outside of those truly once in a generation players, he's on that next tier. I feel very strongly he deserves to be 101. He broke out late, or I guess he became a starter late in his collegiate career, but outside of that late declare age, he had one of the, if not the best collegiate seasons. And sure, people will say that he had a great supporting cast, both from the coaches like Joe Brady, but also the talent around him like Justin Jefferson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, etc. But what do we know about football? Quarterback drives a team and offense more so than any other person, player, or position. So yeah, he got help from them, but I would say he helped them more than they helped him, because that is how football works. So yeah, great prospect. Totally feel great about him, 101. And I feel wherever Tua ends up going, he's listed as a second everywhere, and I feel fine with him the same way. I would say he would even be an outside contender for that first overall pick if it weren't for this very serious hip injury. But all signs report, at every step of the way, there has not been a setback, not been a negative report. He's always been ahead of schedule, moving faster than they thought he would. So I really think I think he's worth the second overall pick, because like I said, quarterback, the most important position relative to their teammates, not only in football, but maybe across any sport. So the fact that he has a similar upside, he's got more athletic ability, he was a dynamic, talented thrower, 102 as long as you believe he's healthy, which I do.
Right. And in terms of Tua, so, the great Frank Coyle, one of the original draft expert guys, used to have what he called the Hindu theory, the reincarnation. Everybody, he's the next coming of this guy. And so I go to my friend Matt Waldman at the Rookie Scouting Portfolio, who does comparisons. And Justin, so Tua is someone Matt compares to Drew Brees plus Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Is there any way the Redskins say we can't resist this, or does he fall down a little bit, maybe make it to Miami, and how do you see his pro career? Well, do you consider him as good as Burrow, or maybe even better?
Well, I think the durability is obviously the question, right? I mean, you are investing premium capital in this guy. And I know Kyle was saying to me the other day, look, you missed on Patrick Mahomes, you missed on Kyler Murray. In actuality, I was hesitant. You don't see a lot of elite.
You hated Lamar Jackson too. I don't know why.
I didn't have the exposure to Lamar Jackson as you guys did. I was skeptical. I like the player, and I certainly like him a lot more now, given what we saw. As far as Tua, look, you don't see a lot of quarterbacks coming out of Alabama, and for that matter, Oregon either. I think that when you have Jeudy at your disposal and Henry Ruggs, I mean, he was airing the ball out. He looked good. To give up on Dwayne Haskins already would be foolish. I mean, we saw it with Josh Rosen a couple of years ago. I was keen on Rosen, but there's no need for the Washington Redskins to grab him. I think Dwayne Haskins you give him some time, has that rapport with Terry McLaurin. I think the Skins are obviously in a rebuild. So you could make an argument, I think, to draft on a conservative front, to draft Justin Herbert over Tua from a liability. If you're concerned about his durability, but again, and you mentioned Russell Wilson and Drew Brees. I mean, he has been, quoted as saying, I talk to those guys occasionally. So anybody that predicates their game and Russell Wilson drew some Drew Brees comps back in the day as far as a stature and so on and so forth. Those are two of the best ever. So if he holds the bar for himself that high and he has that much confidence, and as Kyle said, the durability is not an issue, then obviously he's going to be a work in progress at the next level, and he's not just going to be potentially have Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs at his disposal at the collegiate level. I mean, this is the big leagues. We know these things take time. So a big investment, a lot of money. Are you concerned about his issue? I know he had a hand issue or a finger issue or something. So there was a pattern with some injuries. I don't know. Could he bust? He certainly could. I think you go either way with Herbert or Tua at QB2.
All right, then. So I tasked these fellows in advance of this podcast to come up with their favorite outliers. Hopefully they have compared notes so that we don't duplicate. But if we do, no big deal, because maybe everyone loves the same guy. You see what I did there? Loves. Because maybe that's my guy. Okay, go ahead, Kyle. You're up.
For me, it's Jalen Hurts. And I think there's obviously an aspect of like the fantasy eyes that I have wanting Jalen Hurts to be good, but also he was good in his final season at Oklahoma. Like, we rag on Joe Burrow for not being this prolific passer until his final season. You can say, like, yeah, him and Jalen Hurts both, but one of them is getting massively discounted for that. And obviously, Joe Burrow's final season was better in terms of total production, but man, Jalen Hurts was massively efficient, and like a lot of sites have graded him out as at least an acceptable to an above average passer, and I think that's fine. If you can get an above average passer in the NFL, you'll take that. That's certainly an okay thing. It's not like you can build Super Bowls on just above average passers, and I mean, he was just by pure numbers, which Oklahoma is a great school for generating pure numbers, but his yards per attempt of 11.3, adjusted yards per attempt of 12.2, like some nearly record-setting numbers. And then you factor in the rush. He rushed 233 times for 1,298 yards, and that doesn't even include the fact that the NCAA refuses to exclude sacks from their rushing stats. Rushed 20 touchdowns. Like, he's probably the closest prospect to Lamar Jackson as a rusher we have, I don't know about ever seen, at least in that vein of him, Cam Newton, those like Michael Vick, those types of players, because I want to say he is like significantly more of a rusher than like even a Kyler Murray. I think he could be the clear number 2 rushing quarterback in the league from day one. So when you add that ability to at least being a competent passer, God, I can't imagine why teams are going to let him fall out of the first round. Almost certainly that seems like, just based on betting markets and overall sentiment, he will not really have much of a chance of getting in the first round. I just can't picture why, especially when we know not only does he have a lot of positive indicators, he plays quarterback. Like, why would you not be taking a guy with this type of upside at the quarterback position? I don't get it, but I'm going to be stashing him in all of my Superflex and Dynasty leagues.
Oh, by the way, Justin, before we get into this, I just want to let everyone know I did your research for you, and it was Eric Dickerson, traded 4 times to Brandon Cooks.
All right, I knew. All right.
So there's that. But now,
but the circumstances were different.
Yeah, and he never played for the last team. He was traded to the Packers at the end and never played for them. So let's get into your favorite quarterback outside those top 3. Justin, did Kyle hurt you with his pick? Did you see what look at me go?
Yeah. I think in this range here, it's going to be Jake Fromm, Jacob Eason, or Jordan Love. For me, it's Jordan Love, the wild card. He's raw. I know he kind of fizzled out So there's some uncertainty with Love, but he fits the mold of what an NFL team wants in a quarterback: 6'4", rocket for an arm, a little bit of mobility. So he's going to be less of a project than some of these other guys. So for me, it's Jordan Love. I mean, I got to agree with Kyle there. I don't think this is this class here is a sure shot at quarterback in terms of the future. I think we can all be in agreement that wide receiver is the class here. So for me, it's Jordan Love. I think it's, I mentioned a couple weeks ago that like the Patriots, I could see if they were to invest, and I don't know that they will, it would be Love for me, a project that Bill Belichick could work with, raw, but yet fits that kind of Matt Ryan frame, 6'4". But, I wouldn't be opposed to going Eason or Fromm either. Let's be honest, even Burrow or Tua or Justin Herbert, for the next couple of years anyways, they're going to be a work in progress. I mean, I'm a firm believer that the only way you're going to find out what any of these quarterbacks are is if they're immediately thrown into the flames to go through that learning curve and the highs and lows. So, but as we've seen historically, a lot of these guys will take the back seat for a year and watch and learn. But permitting, these guys go to a team that need them, and there are teams like the Chargers, the Miami Dolphins that could use a quarterback. I think that the majority of them are going to sit for a little bit. So, but for me, it's Jordan Love. I like the idea. He's got confidence. He is kind of like the wild card in this draft, but he kind of checks checks all the boxes for me, and you're not going to have to pay that Joe Burrow or Tua premium.
Impressive on two levels, and that it's the same guy that I love, Jordan Love, and also that you only picked three and tried to fit only three into the one-man rotation there. Very well done.
Nice.
And I got to say, one of my most competitive leagues out there, I'm in a league called the DFB Invitational. Scott Barrett runs it. Has some heavy hitters in it, some friends of the program, including Matthew Berry, Rich Rebar, Barrett, Graham Barfield, Pat Thorman, Davis Maddock. I mean, I don't want to name drop here. Evan Silva. I mean, it's a tough league, right? And so I got Love in at 206. It's a super flex league, so I was pretty pleased to land him there. But Burrow went off very early. Jonathan Taylor was actually the first pick off, but Burrow went very early. Tua went fifth overall. And so the quarterbacks were going fast and furious in this one. So there's that. Now let's move on to the running back selections. And I guess the top five seem to be pretty well set, right? I mean, it's not a lot of confusion. Wisconsin's Jonathan Taylor, a fellow who joined me on my Sirius show and was a delight. Just a sharp kid. Really enjoyed him. DeAndre Swift from Georgia, J.K. Dobbins from Ohio State, Cam Akers from Florida State, Clyde Edwards-Helaire from LSU. I think those first four seem like, they all have their supporters, Justin. Put them in the order you like them.
Well, it's Swift and Taylor 1A, 1B. And I think that you need to put Dobbins at 3. But like you said, after Swift and Taylor, I think you can make an argument for with Akers and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. For me, Kyle and I were talking earlier because we have different opinions for that running back outside of that 5 there. You're digging around and so on and so forth. I look at the kid from BC, but he's 240 or 230 pounds. I'm not into the bigger back. So I'm going to go take a shot on Keyshawn Vaughn out of Vanderbilt. 5'10", checks all the boxes there. Went from Tennessee to Vanderbilt. This is a kid that I think can do it all. I'm a believer that fantasy running backs in redraft leagues are going to get an opportunity at some point. They can bring us upside. We've seen it time to time, the C.J. Andersons of the world. Second half, injuries happen, running backs pop up. So I tend to invest in these running backs at some point in the draft, and you don't spend a lot of money, but they could be your league winner at the end. So tonight's Keyshawn Vaughn out of Vanderbilt, 214. Anthony McFarland out of Maryland, 5'8", only 208. Seems like he's going to be a later guy. Time will tell. Lance Zierlein, who I value his opinion, is kind of keen on him. We don't know a ton about Anthony McFarland, can do a little this, little that. And let's face it, we were talking about Christian McCaffrey earlier in the show. And I used to say, half kiddingly, that every team yearns for a Duke Johnson. And obviously the bar is higher than Duke Johnson, but you kind of know what you're getting out of a Duke Johnson. I think teams from an investment standpoint, want running backs at this point that can do a little of this, do a little of that. So, you want a lighter running back. Some of these running backs that are 225, 230, 240, they're not going to have 60, 70, 80 receptions. And volume is kind of turned into touches in fantasy land. So you might not have a guy that's getting 300 carries, at this point in time outside of Derrick Henry, but you'll get a guy that has 200 carries and you're content with 70, 80 receptions as well. So I think McFarland and Keyshawn Vaughn are two guys that I'm looking at tonight.
Yeah, you mentioned the Boston College kid, A.J. Dillon, a 250-pounder. A lot of people have him in that top five. We're, again, using the Fantasy Pros consensus rankings for the rookies coming out. So that's why he wasn't included. Kyle, your quick thoughts on the top five and your outliers.
The top five, I'm not really going to talk about them at all from a real-life football perspective because running backs don't really add much value.
Right.
Like, very few running backs
we're looking for the cheaper guys, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, running backs aren't really going to add much value to a real NFL team, especially when you compare them to, like, first-round quarterbacks, obviously. Like, we kind of know this at this point. So just from a fantasy perspective, Jonathan Taylor, to me, is, like, very clearly the 101. When you look at the fact that he broke out as a freshman at Wisconsin, not just broke out, but he crushes as a freshman. He has 3 seasons where he averages over 2,000 yards just on the ground alone. And then in his final season, he actually showed some signs of life as a receiver with over 20 receptions. He was I think it was 26 to be exact. But that checks the final box. That was the final box we were missing. And then, of course, he goes to the combine and just blazes with his speed at his size. What did he run, like a 4.39, was it? Just like his size-speed combination plus his resume. I don't see how he couldn't be your rookie 101 as of right now. Of course, we're 10 days away from the draft, something like that.
Yes.
As of recording this. So if he falls to like the late second, early third, which I don't think is impossible, I think that is within the range of outcomes, however unlikely. And then DeAndre Swift, for instance, goes like top 15. If the gap between them becomes that incredibly wide, the NFL is screaming at us that one of these guys is going to get a ton of touches and the other guy might not make a huge impact in his first year. Sure. Given that disparity in draft capital, I will have to change my evaluation of them. But until that happens, Jonathan Taylor's clearly the 101. Then DeAndre Swift, not like an incredible prospect in terms of his collegiate production. And we typically see that like committee backs at the college level don't go on to be anything other than committee backs at the NFL level. But to be fair, like Georgia is one of a few schools that has so much running back talent that we saw the same thing with Josh Jacobs the last year from Alabama. Goes on to the NFL despite being a committee back. If the NFL is going to say he's worthy of a first-round pick, meaning he's going to get a lot of touches, I'll believe them. Beyond that, Dobbins, Akers, I like both a lot. I could see them switch between 3 and 4, either of them assuming like similar-ish draft capital. I don't love Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Didn't really do much until his final season, and any running back who has a pulse on that offense is going to be able to do a lot because it's so easy to do anything as a running back when you play on an offense that like had a 5,000 plus yard passer under center. So, and his size at like 5'7", he's thick. He's like 200 or more pounds, I think, at 5'7". So like in terms of weight, he checks that box, but his size is small. I see him more as like a James White type, but from like, this is the one exception I'll make from the NFL perspective. That's actually a really good thing.
That's a good thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good thing. So actually, I think he might be one of the guys who provides the most value.
I think, just given that where that's going, it's worth noting our good friend Mike Clay, who I have a ton of respect for, has him as his top dynasty running back, Edwards-Helaire. So there's that.
Yeah, outside of the top five, I don't know. I think Justin named some good guys. I like Zach Moss. He disappointed at the combine, 19 reps on the bench. Bench doesn't really, the thing is, combine doesn't really matter. Nobody creating any models has been able to tease out much predictiveness, if any, from combine metrics. At wide receiver, I think it matters the least, then tight end the most, running back somewhere in between. But 4.65 isn't awful. It's 35th percentile per player profiler. It's totally within the bounds of you can see guys do well with this amount of athleticism. And then when you look at his college resume, incredible production since his second year at school. He's got over 1,000 yards in back-to-back seasons, and he's massive. Not only does he have production as a receiver with 2 seasons of over 25 receptions, but he was efficient. He went for 388 yards on less than 30 targets. I think he checks all the boxes except athleticism, and he's not like a major red flag in athleticism. I don't think he'll be a massive game changer, because you do see a lot of times that the best running backs in the NFL are very athletic. But given how people are reacting to his combine, that it was just this implosion on his value, I think he's a guy who's probably going to end up being underrated because of that.
Yeah, 2 quick notes, real quick. Jonathan Taylor had some fumble issues at Wisconsin. You better put the ball away, young man. And I read something interesting on Swift earlier. Better than Sony Michel, and faster than Nick Chubb. I think the best is yet to come out of Sony Michel, permitting the Pat to get a better O-line. And Nick Chubb, just your boy Matt Waldman, absolutely nailed him a couple of years ago and kind of put the knee issues aside. So the Georgia Bulldogs have been pumping out running backs. I love Swift.
All right. And I'm going to go with Joshua Kelly as my outlier, the UCLA running back, 5'10", 212. Guy to keep an eye on. He'll go later in the draft, and we see how those things go for some of these fellas. I'm going to run through the top 10 wide receivers at Fantasy Pros, and I just want you guys to plant a flag on one each of them for the purposes of our discussion today. And again, we're going to get into all these guys in depth, or at least the guys who get drafted and go to fortuitous situations in our estimation in our post-draft pod, which will come, well, shortly after the draft. So the top 10, as ordered by Fantasy Pros: CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma, Jerry Jeudy from Alabama, Justin Jefferson, LSU, Henry Ruggs, the speedy Henry Ruggs, the third from Alabama, Jalen Reagor from TCU, T. Higgins, Clemson, Denzel Mims, Baylor, Laviska Shenault Jr. from Colorado, Michael Pittman Jr., the big fella out of USC, and Brandon Ayuk from Arizona State. If you could only have one of those guys, Kyle, which would it be?
Given their price, I'll say Denzel Mims. First, I'll start off. I guess this is kind of the big sticking point for a lot of people, is whether you have Lamb or Jeudy at the top. I'll take Lamb just because what we know is like the amount he produced at college. Like you just don't see guys who dominate their offense to the extent he did while still being massively efficient. Like he was like his production was sort of Mike Evans-esque in that he both had a high, like he can go downfield, but also command his entire offense, or at least to the extent that any receiver does command an offense from that downfield role. So like I think he's my number one, but like Jerry Jeudy is a great prospect too. Totally fine with him being number one. But for the price, Denzel Mims, like I feel very confident given that he is like right. You know, you read off the list. He was listed as wide receiver 7.
Yeah.
I'll take him over at least the 2 to 3 guys ahead of him in Ruggs, Higgins, and Reagor. And Jefferson, like, you know, these guys, depending on their landing spot and their draft capital, can change. But I really like the value you're going to get on Mims. Broke out in his second year at Baylor. Was pretty much like consistently producing, despite Baylor's offense not being like the exact Baylor offense of old. And then incredibly athletic. 77th percentile athleticism. And that doesn't like that. Basically, that's just weighed down by his agility score, which was still above average. Like his 3-cone, still above average. Just not as incredible as his 4.38 speed at 6'3", 207. Like he has incredible burst based on both his vertical and broad. I can't find very many red flag. Like I can't find any like yellow or even like moderately lime green flags. He just checks every box for me. And you don't find like the guys ahead of him don't all check every box. So I love me some Denzel Mims.
I'm just going to throw out there, since you mentioned, we've talked a little bit about Matt Waldman, my good friend over at Football Guys and the rookie scouting portfolio. He has Mims number 2 as his wide receiver 2 overall. So there's that. Justin, I give you one of the top 10. That would be less than 2, more than 0, 1. Pick one.
I've been thinking about this, and I was going to go Justin Jefferson, but dollar for dollar. And earlier I wrote down Chase Claypool out of Notre Dame. I think he's going to be somewhat of a sleeper, 6'4", but similar in stature to Chase Claypool out of Notre Dame. I like Michael Pittman out of USC. He has that 6'4" frame, Mike Evans-esque, go up and get it type of wide receiver. Now we know, and Mike Clay, we've talked, guys like Mike Clay have met, wide receivers are going to struggle early on, whether it's comprehension of the playbook. I tend to believe a guy like Michael Pittman, permitting he lands in the right spot, can help a team immediately. And from a fantasy angle, you're not playing that Jerry Jeudy, Ruggs premium. So give me Pittman. This is a deep wide receiver class, one of the better ones we've seen in a while. So there's numerous ways you could go. Tonight, it's Pittman. I heard him speak on Sirius XM a couple weeks ago. I don't know if it wasn't with you guys, But
no, you did hear Zach Moss with us, though, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, so Michael Pittman, of course, his old man played, carried himself, and no, it's only the radio. I didn't say I had lunch with the young man, but confidence. USC's been pumping out some wide receivers recently. 6'4", you got to love that. He doesn't have Henry Ruggs 4.27 speed, but anybody who predicates a game with a Mike Evans body type, I'm gonna take it. And obviously, gentlemen, the development and the early splashes of any of these guys is contingent upon where they land and the quarterback that they play with. So if the opportunity is there, and there's going to be more opportunity than others for some of these guys early on, dollar for dollar, it's Michael Pittman today. But you could make an argument for 15 rookie wide receivers tonight.
Yeah, I have a very hard time, overlooking that kind of size. Although Kyle has a great article up at the Football Diehard website right now, discussing whether the slot receiver is really the new X receiver. I recommend everyone go read that, and maybe you'll glean some interesting information. Of this bunch, I like CeeDee Lamb an awful lot. I suspect he'll go to the Jets at 11. We'll see how that plays out. Look, I like all these guys.
Is he the best?
I don't know if he's the best. I don't know if he's the best, but I think he's a hell of a playmaker, and there's something to be said for that. I mean, if he goes first overall and gets a good opportunity, I guess that's what I'm looking at. The guys that are going to go earliest maybe get the best opportunity to play.
To the Jets? I think the Jets is
that's my guess.
Out goes Robbie Anderson. I mean, you got to get Sam Darnold something to work with outside of that Julio Jones lookalike and Brashard Perriman. So I think
so. Justin,
go ahead.
He is the top guy for me. But Justin, you're outsider. You're outlier. You're one guy.
It's going to be Chase Claypool out of Notre Dame. Awful quarterback play. This is another guy. Checks the boxes. He's raw. He's not fast. You can have a red zone presence. I'm there. And I think right outside the top 10, you could put him in that scope with the Pittmans, with the Denzel Mims out of Baylor, that territory there. So it's a flyer. It's going to take time for all these guys, including Lamb and Jeudy. But for me, and he's opened up a lot of eyes, Chase Claypool, I like the size. And you could very well compare him to Michael Pittman. So going to be Chase Claypool. I'll probably put him at he's right around 10 or 11 for rookies. Again, you can make an argument for 15 of these guys.
Two names, just names that you also like.
Out of this wide receiver bunch?
Yeah, outside the top 10.
Oh, boy. Let's see. I think KJ Hamler out of Penn State. We're used to seeing bigger Penn State guys. My friend Matt Harmon used to tout Allen Robinson and way back. And Allen Robinson, of course, he's 6'3". I'm not accustomed to seeing 5'9" Penn State guys. Kind of flashy, can do it all. I think, like Kyle said, 5'9", 178. I think that Kyle's right in the sense where teams are gravitating more towards slot guys. I'm there, so I would take a shot on him. Let's see. Rager's in that scope there. T. Higgins is there.
Those are in the top 10. Give me one outside the top 10. Just a name.
It's Chase. It is Chase Claypool.
All right.
It's Chase Claypool.
I tried to give you three, and I give up now. You win.
Okay.
Kyle, give me your favorite outlier and two other names you'll be watching.
So for my favorite outlier, oh baby, give me some Tyler Johnson. Incredible dominator. He was producing against darn good Big Ten competition while playing at Minnesota. 1,300 yards in his final season, broke out at the age of 19. That gives him a 90th percentile breakout age and a 98th percentile college dominator. 6'2", 206. He has the size to be your true X receiver, and he's coming out he'll be 22 around when the season starts, coming out at a relatively young age. I guess people are concerned with his injury that's currently kept him from the combine, and obviously we will never get workout metrics because it doesn't seem like we'll ever get the chance to get a pro day from him. So there are still questions, but the cost you're going to have to that you will have to spend for him, both in dynasty drafts and your NFL, the actual NFL draft, is just inexplicable to me. A guy with the database measurables that he has, I don't see how. Bryan Edwards, a very same story, just with not like the true peak high-end production. That is a guy very much interested in as well for similar reasons, just not quite to the extent. And outside of that, I don't know. I like those two guys so much more than the next top 10. That's
any worries about the foot for Edwards?
Yeah, I think that was it's a concern, but the price seems so he's getting pushed so far down right now, dynasty rankings, but assumedly the real NFL draft too. That I guess there's some concern that the injury, especially anytime you get a rookie with injury concerns, especially at the receiver position, where these guys do take a bit longer to develop already than running backs, it is a concern because you want them to get as many reps as possible as soon as possible. But the concern is more than baked into his price.
He's a slot guy too, right, Kyle? I mean, he's your immediate slot guy. Like he is a slot guy. He said he can do it all, but he's going to be a slot guy right off the bat, right? At this level.
Yeah, I've seen that come to him a lot, that he can play. He can be like the next generation. We're seeing a lot of, instead of like the Wes Welker type of slot, the big slots like Michael Thomas. Not comping him to Michael Thomas, but I'm seeing a lot of that's what he can do in the NFL, and I agree that's one of the ways he can win. Although, like you said, he's versatile. I don't think it's the only way he can win.
My outliers, Quintez Cephas. This is a Matt Waldman special out of Wisconsin, a little faster than he ran at the combine on his own pro day. Draws an Anquan Bolden comparison, and I like tough receivers. The other guys I have an eye on, Van Jefferson, slot guy out of Florida, and Devin Duvernay, a guy who's maybe a little more versatile, maybe can fit in early on in his career because of that versatility. Tight ends. The best position of all for rookies. We love them so much. Three guys I'm going to roll through in the top group. Hunter Bryant out of Washington, Bryson Hopkins out of Purdue, and Cole, how do I say that? Kmet?
Yep, that's it, I believe.
Out of Notre Dame. Do we care, Justin?
Not really. Not really, and not year one, but
right. If you're a dynasty player, is there anyone on this list or outside of this list you might like to have as a stash and develop?
I would say that it's Hunter Bryant, wide receiver-esque. He tested okay, but I mean, we've seen this time and time again, even with round one tight ends. Like a couple of years ago, it was O.J. Howard, Njoku, and Evan Ingram, and they're coming to their own. But we haven't seen the best of O.J. Howard yet, and we haven't seen the best of Dave Njoku, and we're going on year 3, and these guys were first-round tight ends. I don't know that any of these guys are going in the first round. Cole Kmet has good hands. Obviously, we like that. He did all right at the combine. And the thing about Bryce Hopkins is, a lot of drops. I mean, your job is to catch the football. So, I mean, to me, drops at the tight end level or wide receivers, you can't. There's not enough words that will piss me off. When I see drops, that's your primary purpose, is to catch the football. So 22 drops, I think, since 2016, inexcusable. I do have a guy that PFF had graded well, in Adam Troutman, but I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts, Kyle?
Yeah, I like none of the top 3 tight ends awfully interest me. They all have pretty glaring red flags. Cole Kmet just wasn't massively productive. Hunter Bryant was productive, but doesn't have the requisite size. It was 6'2" or 6'3". Still physically a thick dude, but you just don't see that would be on the lowest range of outcome or lowest range of possibilities for successful tight ends. There's not a lot of players who in the history of the NFL have looked like he does and been massively successful. One guy outside of this, Albert O. Not even gonna take a
try it. I dare you.
Okumbunum? Is that? I'm pretty sure that's close.
I'll take it. Hell, I struggle with Kmet. I want to make the K silent just so I don't screw that up.
Yeah,
What about
Okumbunum.
Thaddeus Moss, just for lineage, right? Just for pedigree.
Sure.
No, we learned our lesson with Deron Carter.
I guess we did. Yes, we did.
Yeah, Albert O's production though, just before we close out, man, as a freshman in Missouri, going for 415 yards, not incredible, but 11 touchdowns is insane. His final season dropped off a bit, but that's because they went from, I believe it was Drew Lock there, to someone much worse. And his 4.49 speed at his size, 6'6", 258, that is one very constant among elite tight ends, no matter where you look, is that they are athletic to a fault. They're all incredibly athletic when you look at George Kittle, Travis Kelce, and downward. They all may have like spotty production profiles, which Albert O does not, but they all may have like production here or there. But athleticism is the one thing that kind of ties all the elite tight ends together, and Albert O appears to have that in spades.
To be clear, I've seen 0% of these guys go in any first round in any mock draft I've seen. So there's that. And so we'll kind of roll forward, and we've all learned many lessons about tight ends over the course of time, and more of a developmental position, as we have clearly learned. Now, I think we'll wrap it up, and we'll prepare for the draft, fellas. Any final thoughts from you, Justin Lonero?
No, it's going to be interesting to watch this draft, but I think there's so much anticipation whether there's going to be a season or not. We've never seen a draft in this capacity. Everybody's going to be home, so there'll be. By the way, the XFL is donezo, so forget about sad story there. But it'll be interesting, and Bob, it's scary on one hand, and it's kind of fascinating on the other that these virtual things that we're doing. Of course, we've been doing them for a while, recording podcasts and so on and so forth. Is going to be the new wave. I mean, the world. This is going to clear up eventually, but a lot of things that have come out of this coronavirus scare are going to become the new normal, as abnormal as they sound
Absolutely.
tonight.
I couldn't agree more with that. And I'll just, before we let Kyle close it out, I'll just say we talked a little bit before the show, and I'll just remind everyone that in the moment, we are in a moment. Everything seems worse in the moment, and everything looks bleakest in the moment. So have a little optimism. I'll look forward a little bit and wait till the day we get through this and we start to get into that new normal and see how it plays out. And if I'm betting today, I'm betting football will be some part of that, but I'm optimistic. Kyle?
That feels like a beautiful way to close us out. I would end it no other way. So for myself, for you, for Justin, we'll catch you guys probably within a week or two after the draft. We'll see you then.